Today, modern Greece is synonymous with a specific palette: beautiful blue rooftops, a blue flag, and these crystal blue waters. But in the works of Homer from the 8th century BC, that color is missing entirely. Across the Iliad and the Odyssey, black is mentioned 170 times and white 100 times. Red, yellow, and green appear frequently, but the word blue never appears. Homer described things we see as blue using a completely different vocabulary. He famously called the ocean wine dark and categorized honey as green and sheep as violet. This lack of a word led some to suggest the ancient Greeks were colorblind. But biological color vision evolved 30 million years ago, well before the dawn of Greek civilization. Modern humans and ancient Greeks share the exact same ocular hardware. This silence suggests the mystery is located in the mind rather than the eye. Linguists eventually discovered that this absence wasn't unique to Greece. They found the same color across multiple isolated ancient civilizations. From ancient Icelandic texts all the way to the original Hebrew Bible, researchers failed to find a single specific reference to blue. Ancient Chinese writings follow the exact same pattern, detailing red, black, and white, while ignoring the color of the sky. These findings support the theory of linguistic relativity, the idea that the language we speak determines the framework of our thoughts. Under this theory, words are the categories the brain uses to sort and prioritize the constant stream of sensory data. Without a category, the data remains unorganized. In the mid-1800s, linguists realized that color words enter human languages in a specific, deterministic order across every culture. Black and white are always first, distinguishing between light and dark. Red follows immediately as the first true color. Then yellow and green appear to distinguish ripe and unripe food. Finally, blue is the final color to enter. While green and yellow occasionally swap places, red is always first and blue is always last. This rigid order suggests the development of language is governed by a consistent evolutionary logic. We prioritize red because it is the color of blood, danger, and the physiological changes in the human face during communication. It was also an accessible pigment. Early humans could simply pick up a piece of dry clay and use it to leave a permanent mark. Blue is naturally scarce. Blue fruits and animals are rare. In many cases, like butterflies, the color is a light illusion rather than a physical pigment. Creating a stable blue pigment is a difficult chemical challenge that most civilizations failed to solve for millennia. The Egyptians were the only ancient culture to master this chemistry early on, so they were the only ones with a word for it. Societies do not typically invent words for things they cannot physically produce or interact with. This forces us to ask how the ancient mind processed the blue sky without a name. Evidence from modern isolated cultures suggests they categorized the sky as a shade of black, viewing it as a dark hue rather than a unique color. Consider this single spectrum of light, moving from deep red to a pale, washed-out hue. In English, we draw a line in the middle of this gradient and call the right side a separate color, pink. Physically, pink is a lighter hue of red, but the presence of a specific word forces the brain to classify it as a distinct entity. Language acts as a filter, splitting continuous visual data into separate, manageable boxes. The Himba people of Namibia provide a modern look at how this linguistic filtering works in practice. Their vocabulary includes many specific words for green, but lacks a separate category for blue. When asked to find the blue square in this circle of green ones, they struggle. Without a word to isolate blue, their brains take longer to acknowledge the visual gap. But if we reverse the test to find a subtle variation of green, they identify it instantly. This is a task most Westerners fail because we lack the hyper-specific green vocabulary that would allow our brains to flag the difference. While our eyes see the same light, our brains only highlight the details that our language has taught us to notice. Light enters the human eye as raw data, hitting the optic nerve as a complex series of waves. Before we are consciously aware of what we are seeing, this information is processed by the brain's language centers. This creates a neurological feedback loop between our visual and linguistic systems. Once we learn a word for a color, the language center tells the visual cortex to exaggerate the differences between hues at the borders of those categories. This is similar to learning a new language. At first, foreign speech sounds like a continuous stream of noise, but as you learn words, your brain begins to physically separate that noise into distinct, clear units. Without a name to contextualize the input, the brain effectively discards the subtle differences in light as irrelevant background noise. Homer wasn't colorblind when he looked at the sea. His brain simply hadn't been trained to categorize that specific wavelength of light as its own entity. This reveals that what we see is inextricably linked to what we say. Human perception is an active process of construction. We use language as a filter to turn raw light into a world we can understand. If you want to see more of how we decode these systems, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next time for more from Insight Engine. Peace.